What if I told you that right now, today, someone is using your own mind against you? Not a hacker. Not a thief. Someone you probably trust. Maybe someone you love. You felt it before, haven't you? That moment after a conversation where you walk away feeling smaller than when you started. Where somehow, without quite understanding how, you agreed to something you didn't want. Where you apologized, and you're not even sure what you did wrong. Where you questioned your own memory of events that you know happened. That creeping, disorienting feeling that reality shifted while you weren't paying attention, and someone else moved the furniture. That's not an accident. That's a system. Dark psychology is not some fringe theory cooked up on internet forums. It's a real, documented set of manipulation tactics, influence techniques, and psychological weapons that have been studied by researchers, cataloged by therapists, and quietly used against ordinary people, in relationships, in workplaces, in families, in advertising, in politics, for decades. The difference between the people who get crushed by these tactics and the people who walk through them untouched is not intelligence. It's not strength. It's simply awareness. Knowing the name of what's happening to you is the single most powerful thing you can do to stop it. Here's what most people don't realize: manipulation doesn't look like manipulation. It never announces itself. It doesn't show up wearing a black hat, twirling a mustache. It shows up wearing the face of someone who says they love you. It shows up as a joke, as concern, as a compliment, as a favor you didn't ask for that now somehow means you owe them something. It arrives wrapped in warmth and leaves you wondering why you feel so cold. Think about the last time someone made you feel guilty for having a boundary. Think about the last time you were praised so heavily before a request that you felt physically unable to say no. Think about the last time someone told you your memory was wrong, told you it didn't happen that way, that you're being too sensitive, that you're imagining things, and for just a moment, you believed them. These are not random moments of social friction. These are techniques. And they work precisely because you don't see them coming. In this video, we're going to change that. By the time you reach the end of the next 50 minutes, you will understand 5 of the most dangerous and most widely used dark psychology tactics that are being deployed against people every single day. We are going to cover gaslighting, the subtle art of rewriting your reality until you can't trust your own mind. We're going to break down love bombing and manufactured intimacy, how people use warmth and affection as a weapon to create dependency before you even realize what's happening. We'll expose scarcity and urgency manipulation, the high-pressure techniques used by everyone from cult recruiters to Fortune 500 companies to shut down your critical thinking and force fast decisions. We'll talk about social proof hijacking, how your natural instinct to follow the crowd gets weaponized against your judgment. And we will go deep on the silent cruelty of covert contracts, the unspoken deals that people make without your knowledge that they then hold over you forever. Each section will give you real examples. Not vague, theoretical examples, but the kind you'll recognize. The kind where you'll pause the video and think, that happened to me. Because it probably did. And more importantly, each section will give you the specific psychological mechanism behind the tactic, so you understand not just what it is, but why it works, and exactly how to disrupt it. This is not a video about becoming paranoid. It's not about seeing every person in your life as a manipulator. Most people around you are not consciously running psychological operations on your mind, but some are. And even the ones who aren't conscious of it can still cause enormous damage. Understanding these tactics protects you without turning you into someone who trusts no one. In fact, it often does the opposite. Once you can clearly see manipulation, you stop flinching at things that aren't manipulation. Your relationships actually become cleaner. Because you're operating with open eyes. So stay with me. Because what you're about to learn is not comfortable, but it is necessary. And the moment you finish this video, you will never be quite as easy a target again. Part 1. Gaslighting. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from working too hard or sleeping too little, but from spending too much time trying to hold onto your own version of reality while someone else systematically dismantles it. It is one of the most disorienting experiences a human being can go through, and it has a name. Gaslighting. And once you truly understand what it is, how it works, and what it feels like from the inside, you will start seeing it everywhere you never expected it to be. The term comes from a 1944 film, and before that, a 1938 stage play, called Gaslight, in which a husband slowly and deliberately manipulates his wife into believing she is going insane. He dims the gas-powered lights in their home, then denies the lights ever changed. He hides objects and tells her she misplaced them. He tells her she heard sounds that weren't there. He isolates her from people who might confirm her perception. And over time, she stops trusting her own senses. She stops trusting her memory. She stops trusting her mind. The film was fiction, but the mechanism it described was so real, so recognizable to so many people, that the word gaslighting became a permanent part of the psychological vocabulary. Here is the core of what gaslighting actually is, stripped down to its mechanism. It is a sustained pattern of behavior designed to make you doubt your own perception of reality. Not a single argument. Not a disagreement about facts. A pattern, consistent, repeated, escalating, that targets the most fundamental thing you own, your ability to trust what you see, hear, feel, and remember. When someone argues with you about facts, that's a conflict. When someone argues with you about whether your perception of facts is sane, that's gaslighting. And the way it typically unfolds is so gradual that most people don't notice it happening for months, sometimes years. It almost always starts small. You mention that your partner seemed cold to you at dinner. They say, "I wasn't cold." You're imagining things. Okay. Maybe you were reading into it. You remember a conversation where they agreed to something. They say, "I never said that." You must be confusing it with something else. Maybe you misheard. You bring up something that hurt you. They say, "You're way too sensitive. Normal people don't react like that." And you file that away. Over time, these small moments accumulate like sediment. Each one individually feels like nothing, a small correction, a minor disagreement. But collectively they are building a wall between you and your own judgment. And by the time the gaslighting is operating at full intensity, you are no longer going to that person with your perceptions. You are going to them to ask what your perceptions should be. You have outsourced your reality to the very person who has been quietly corrupting it. Let's talk about the specific language patterns gaslighters use, because this is where things get very practical and very recognizable. The first and most common is flat denial. "That never happened. I never said that. You're making things up." No engagement with what you've said, just a clean, confident erasure of your account. The confidence is part of the technique. Gaslighters don't say, "I don't think that's what happened." They say, "That's not what happened." The certainty is engineered to make your uncertainty feel like evidence that you're wrong. The second pattern is minimization. You're so sensitive. You always blow everything out of proportion. Other people would laugh this off. Why can't you? This one is particularly vicious because it attacks not the content of what you're saying but the validity of your emotional response to it. It tells you that even if something did happen, your reaction to it is pathological. The third is diversion. You try to address a specific issue and suddenly you're talking about something completely different, usually something you did wrong 3 months ago. The original topic never gets resolved. It gets buried. And you leave the conversation somehow feeling like you were the one who behaved badly. The fourth is countering. This is when the gaslighter questions your memory so frequently and so aggressively that you begin to preemptively doubt yourself before you've even finished a sentence. Are you sure? Because I remember it very differently. Said enough times, in enough contexts, this phrase alone can destabilize a person's relationship with their own memory entirely. Now here is the piece that most people miss when they talk about gaslighting. The reason it is so devastatingly effective even on intelligent, self-aware people. Gaslighting exploits a feature of the human mind, not a bug. We are social creatures. We evolved to use other people as calibration tools for our own perception. When everyone around you says the sky is green, you don't just shrug and say, well, I see blue. You start to wonder if something is wrong with your eyes. This is healthy social functioning in most contexts. It allows us to correct genuine errors in our thinking by checking them against others. Gaslighters weaponize this feature. They position themselves as your primary reality check. And once they are installed in that role, every time you feel uncertain, which you will, because uncertainty is part of being human, you turn to them, and they point you in the direction that serves them. There's also a deeply shame-based dimension to why people don't recognize gaslighting and don't leave it. Because the experience of being gaslight, especially over a long period, produces a very specific psychological state. You feel stupid. You feel broken. You feel like everyone else seems to be navigating reality just fine, and you are the one person who can't hold onto a thought for 5 minutes without it slipping away. You don't tell people what's happening because you're not even sure what's happening. You just know that you feel crazy. And you don't want anyone to know that. So you stay quiet. You stay inside the relationship or the situation. And the gaslighting continues, now in perfect privacy. Consider a workplace example, because gaslighting is not confined to romantic relationships. It thrives in offices and boardrooms with remarkable frequency. Imagine you are in a meeting. Your manager speaks over you repeatedly, takes your idea and presents it as their own, and dismisses your contribution. After the meeting, you pull them aside and say, I felt like my input wasn't being respected in there. They look at you with what appears to be genuine concern and say, I don't know what meeting you were in, but that's not what happened. Everyone respects you here. Honestly, I'm a little worried about you. You've been seeming really stressed lately. Are you okay? In one move, they have denied your experience, reframed your legitimate concern as a symptom of your mental state, expressed false care that positions them as the reasonable, concerned party, and made you feel like bringing this up again would be confirming that you are, in fact, losing it. That is a masterclass in workplace gaslighting, and it happens in offices around the world every single day. So what do you actually do about it? The first and most important tool is external documentation. Write things down. Not obsessively, not as a legal brief, just a simple habit of noting conversations that felt disorienting, agreements that were made, your emotional state in the moment. Gaslighting depends on your isolated memory against their confident assertion. Documentation breaks that dynamic. The second tool is trusted outside perspectives. Not to gossip or triangulate, but to genuinely reality check. Hey, am I being unreasonable here? Does this seem normal to you? A person outside the dynamic can often see the pattern far more clearly than you can from inside it. The third tool, and this one is subtle but powerful, is to stop arguing about what happened and start naming the pattern. Instead of saying, no, I'm right, it did happen that way, which is a trap, Because now you're in an endless debate about facts. Try saying, I noticed that whenever I bring something up that bothered me, we end up talking about whether my memory is accurate instead of the thing I brought up. I'd like to talk about the actual issue. You are not attacking them. You are describing a pattern. And if they are gaslighting you, that shift in frame will be extraordinarily uncomfortable for them, because it doesn't give them a fact to dispute. It names the mechanism. Gaslighting is, at its core, an attack on your relationship with your own mind. And the defense against it is exactly what you might expect: rebuilding that relationship. Trusting your gut. Writing things down. Staying connected to people outside the dynamic. And learning, slowly, sometimes painfully, that your perception of reality is not a weakness to be corrected. It is yours. It is valid. And no one gets to take it from you. Part 2. Love bombing and manufactured intimacy. Imagine meeting someone who, within the first week of knowing you, makes you feel like the most extraordinary person who has ever walked into their life. They text you good morning before you've even had coffee. They remember every small thing you mentioned in passing: the name of your childhood dog, your complicated relationship with your father, the obscure band you loved at 16, and they bring these things back to you like gifts. They tell you they've never felt this way before. They tell you that meeting you has changed something fundamental in them. They want to spend every available hour with you. They talk about the future, your future together, with a certainty and a warmth that feels like standing in sunlight after a very long winter. You feel seen. Truly, completely seen. And you think, finally, this is what it's supposed to feel like. What you don't realize, what almost no one realizes in the moment, is that you are not in a relationship. You are in a setup. Love bombing is one of the most seductive and most dangerous tactics in the dark psychology playbook, and what makes it uniquely difficult to recognize is that it feels, from the inside, indistinguishable from genuine, deep, early-stage romantic connection. The overwhelming attention, the intensity, the sense of being uniquely understood, these are things that real love can produce. The difference is not in how it feels. The difference is in what it is designed to do. Real intimacy builds organically over time as two people reveal themselves to each other, sit with each other's complexity, navigate disappointment, and choose each other again. Love bombing is a manufactured shortcut to the emotional state that real intimacy produces, engineered not to connect with you, but to install dependency before your critical thinking has had time to engage. The term was first used by researchers studying cult recruitment tactics in the 1970s. Cult organizations discovered something important: if you overwhelm a potential recruit with affection, attention, validation, and a sense of belonging in the early stages of contact, you can bypass their rational evaluation of whether this group is actually good for them. The emotional experience of being loved and accepted is so powerful that it overrides skepticism. People would join organizations with bizarre belief systems, abusive hierarchies, and clearly exploitative structures, not because they were stupid, but because their need for connection and belonging had been so precisely and so generously satisfied that leaving felt like giving up the best thing that had ever happened to them. The tactic migrated from cult recruitment into abusive romantic relationships, manipulative friendships, toxic workplaces, and high-pressure sales environments. Same mechanism, different containers. Here is the psychological architecture underneath love bombing. Human beings have a deep, evolutionarily wired need for belonging, validation, and attachment. When that need is met, when we feel truly seen and wanted, our brains release a cocktail of neurochemicals including dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin that produces a state genuinely comparable to the effect of certain drugs. We are not being metaphorical when we say people are addicted to certain relationships. The neurochemical pattern of intense early-phase romantic bonding activates the same reward pathways as cocaine. Love bombing deliberately engineers the maximum dose of that neurochemical response in the shortest possible time. The result is that before you have had any real opportunity to evaluate this person, to see how they handle conflict, disappointment, or their own darker impulses, you are already chemically bonded to them. You are already in withdrawal at the mere thought of losing them. And that is precisely the position your love bomber needs you to be in before phase 2 begins. Because love bombing is never the whole story. It is always a first act. The second act, which arrives so gradually that most people don't recognize it as a shift until they are deep inside it, is the withdrawal. The same person who flooded you with attention begins to ration it. The texts come less frequently. The warmth has an unpredictable quality now. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it isn't, and you can't identify a reliable pattern. They become critical where they were once endlessly encouraging. Small things about you that they initially found charming are now presented as problems. And here is the truly insidious part. Because you built this relationship on the foundation of their extraordinary attention and approval, its removal doesn't make you angry, it makes you desperate. You don't think something is wrong with this person. You think something is wrong with me. I need to get back to where we were. I need to be better. You start working to recover something that was never real to begin with. Psychologists call this intermittent reinforcement, and it is one of the most powerful behavioral conditioning mechanisms known to science. When a reward comes reliably and consistently, we appreciate it but don't become obsessed with it. When a reward comes randomly and unpredictably, sometimes present, sometimes absent, with no clear logic, we become fixated on it. We cannot stop thinking about it. We do more and more to try to produce it. The variable reward schedule is the same mechanism that makes slot machines so addictive, and it is not an accident that it follows the love bombing phase so reliably. The love bombing creates the attachment. The withdrawal creates the anxiety. The intermittent reinforcement locks the cycle in place. And by this point, many people are so deep in the pattern that the relationship has fundamentally restructured their self-concept. Their sense of their own worth has become dependent on the approval of the one person who is strategically withholding it. Let's ground this in a specific scenario, because the abstract description doesn't fully capture how natural and invisible this process feels in real life. Sarah meets Daniel at a work event. He is attentive, funny, magnetic. Within days he is calling her his person, sending her articles she mentioned in passing, showing up at her favorite coffee shop because he remembered she mentioned it once. He tells her he has never been vulnerable with anyone the way he is with her, that she is the first person who has ever really understood him. Within 3 weeks they are spending every weekend together. Her friends barely see her anymore, not because Daniel prohibited it, but because being with him felt so urgent, so alive, that everything else faded. She feels, for the first time in years, completely whole. 6 weeks in, something shifts. He cancels plans. He's vague about why. He mentions, casually, that his ex used to understand him better in some specific way. He says Sarah is a lot sometimes. She finds herself lying awake replaying conversations, trying to find where she went wrong. She starts adjusting herself, her opinions, her needs, her personality, to try to get back to those first golden weeks. She doesn't realize that those golden weeks were not the relationship. They were the lure. Now let's talk about a form of this that people almost never discuss: manufactured intimacy in non-romantic contexts. Because love bombing is not exclusive to romantic manipulation. It appears in friendships where someone overwhelms you with closeness and then uses the resulting bond as leverage. It appears in professional mentorship dynamics where an authority figure showers a junior person with attention and investment, creating a loyalty and gratitude that can later be exploited. It appears with breathtaking frequency in high-control religious communities, in multi-level marketing organizations, in certain therapy-adjacent spaces where a charismatic leader creates a powerful sense of personal connection with followers as a tool of control. In every case, the structure is identical. Create an unusually intense sense of being seen and valued, attach the person to that feeling, and then use their desire to maintain it as a mechanism of influence. There is also a digital dimension to this that deserves serious attention in our current moment. Social media, dating apps, and messaging platforms have created an environment in which manufactured intimacy can be deployed at extraordinary scale and speed. A person can be love-bombed across a screen by someone they have never met in person, with the physical distance actually amplifying the effect because it removes the subtle, grounding cues, facial expressions and unguarded moments, body language, the simple reality of someone's physical presence, that might otherwise slow the process of idealization. Online love bombing can create attachments so powerful that people have upended their lives for people who, in some cases, did not exist at all. So how do you protect yourself without closing yourself off to genuine connection? The first and most important principle is this: let intimacy have a pace. Real connection does not need to rush. Someone who is genuinely interested in you is interested in the actual you, the complicated, gradual, slowly revealed you, not a rapid-fire impression of you that they are mirroring back at high intensity. If someone is moving so fast that you feel like you can barely keep up, that speed itself is information. Pay attention to it. The second principle is to maintain your existing life. Love bombing almost always involves a subtle pressure to restructure your world around the new person, to see your friends less, to spend all available time together, to let other relationships atrophy. This is not romantic devotion. It is the removal of your external reference points. Keep your friendships. Keep your routines. Keep the people in your life who knew you before this person arrived. The third principle is to watch for the gap between words and patterns over time. Love bombers are almost universally excellent with words. They say the right things. But words are cheap and patterns are expensive. Watch how someone behaves across different emotional contexts, when they are disappointed, when something doesn't go their way, when the initial glow of newness has dimmed slightly. Who they are in those ordinary, unglamorous moments is who they actually are. And finally, and this one is harder, because it requires sitting with some discomfort, learn to be a little suspicious of feeling overwhelmingly chosen. There is a difference between feeling loved and feeling selected. Genuine love tends to feel warm and steady and safe, even if it is also exciting. Being love-bombed tends to feel overwhelming, a little dizzying, a little too much, in a way that you push away because it feels ungrateful to question something so good. That small, quiet voice that says this is a lot before you talk yourself out of it. That voice is not anxiety and it is not self-sabotage. That voice is your nervous system doing its job. Learn to listen to it. Because the people who use love as a weapon are counting on you not to. Part 3. Scarcity and urgency manipulation. There is a moment that almost every person alive has experienced. You are about to make a decision, a purchase, a commitment, a choice of some kind, and you feel completely fine about taking your time. And then someone says 5 words that change everything. This offer expires at midnight. Or, there are only 2 left in stock. Or, I need an answer from you today. And something happens inside you that is almost physical. A tightening. A spike of anxiety. Suddenly the calm, measured evaluation you were doing gets shoved aside by something more urgent, more animal. Suddenly you are not thinking about whether you want this thing. You are thinking about whether you are going to lose it. And that shift, from do I want this, to am I going to lose this, is one of the most reliably exploited psychological vulnerabilities in human nature. Scarcity and urgency manipulation is everywhere. It is in the hotel booking site that tells you only one room left at this price. 8 people are looking at this right now. It is in the car dealership where the salesperson disappears to check with the manager and comes back saying the deal is only good until end of business today. It is in the romantic partner who suddenly becomes less available right when you are starting to feel secure. It is in the job offer that is presented with a deadline so tight you have no time to think clearly. It is in the political message designed to make you feel that civilization itself will collapse if you don't act right now, today, this moment. The specific context changes. The mechanism never does. To understand why this works so profoundly, you need to understand a concept that behavioral economists call loss aversion. In the 1970s, psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky conducted a series of experiments that revealed something startling about how the human mind evaluates outcomes. We do not weigh potential gains and potential losses equally. Losing something feels approximately twice as painful as gaining the equivalent thing feels good. Losing $20 hurts roughly twice as much as finding $20 feels pleasurable. This asymmetry is not a quirk or an anomaly, it is a fundamental feature of human cognition, wired into us through hundreds of thousands of years of evolution in environments where losing resources often meant death. Scarcity manipulation is a direct hack of loss aversion. It doesn't sell you on the value of what you're gaining. It makes you feel the pain of what you're about to lose, even if you never had it, even if you don't really want it, even if it was never truly scarce to begin with. The urgency component adds a second layer to the attack. When we feel time pressure, something specific happens in the brain, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for rational evaluation, long-term thinking, and impulse control, essentially gets overridden by the more primitive, reactive parts of the brain. This is why people make decisions under artificial time pressure that they would never make if given adequate time to think. The urgency is not just creating anxiety about losing the thing. It is neurologically degrading your capacity to evaluate whether you actually want the thing. You are being made to decide while the part of your brain that makes good decisions has been temporarily disabled. This is not metaphor. This is neuroscience. And the people who use urgency as a manipulation tool, whether they know the neuroscience or not, have discovered empirically that it works. Let's walk through how this plays out in specific contexts, because the same tactic wears very different costumes depending on where you encounter it. In commercial settings, the techniques are so ubiquitous that we have become almost numb to them, which is itself a danger, because numbness is not the same as immunity. The countdown timer on a sales page that resets every time you refresh. The flash sale that somehow runs every single week. The limited edition product where the limitation is entirely manufactured. Amazon's only 3 left in stock label, which research has shown appears on items with large, stable inventories. These commercial applications of scarcity manipulation are relatively low stakes individually, but they condition us to respond to artificial urgency in ways that become much more dangerous when the stakes are higher. In interpersonal and romantic contexts, urgency and scarcity manipulation becomes significantly more damaging. Consider the partner who, just as you are starting to feel settled and secure in a relationship, suddenly becomes mysterious about their weekend plans. Mentions someone new at work in a way that is just ambiguous enough to be unsettling. Becomes slightly less responsive, slightly less warm, without explanation. This is manufactured scarcity, artificially reducing their availability to trigger your loss aversion and reinstate the anxiety of the early pursuit phase. It is breathtakingly common, And many people who do it are not even fully conscious that they are doing it. They only know that when they pull back, their partner pursues harder. The pursuing feels like love. It is actually the pain of threat and loss. And some people, particularly those with certain narcissistic or manipulative tendencies, become genuinely dependent on manufacturing that dynamic because real, stable, mutual intimacy does not produce the same feeling of being urgently needed. The high control group and cult context is where urgency manipulation reaches its most extreme and most damaging expression. Organizations designed to capture and retain members with limited ability to leave use urgency in deeply sophisticated ways. The theological urgency, the end times are coming, the window for salvation is narrowing, the moment of cosmic decision is right now, is one of the oldest manipulation structures in human history. But modern high control groups have updated the technique. The message is delivered personally. I see something in you that is extraordinary, and I am worried that if you don't commit to this path right now, before life gets in the way, you will lose something you can never get back. The scarcity is your own potential. The urgency is the threat of a lesser life. And the decision they are pushing you toward, commitment to the group, financial investment, cutting off outside relationships, is presented as the obvious, urgent response to that threat. In professional and financial contexts, urgency manipulation has ruined lives. Investment opportunities that are closing tomorrow. Business partnerships that require immediate capital before another buyer steps in. Real estate deals where there are 3 other offers on the table right now. Some of these are genuine, sometimes there really is another offer, sometimes the window really is closing. But the tactic is so commonly weaponized that legitimate urgency and manufactured urgency have become nearly indistinguishable without careful examination. And that indistinguishability is itself the point. Con artists and high-pressure salespeople want you to be unable to tell the difference, because the moment you slow down and examine the urgency, it often evaporates. The other offer disappears. The deadline mysteriously extends. The last available slot opens back up. Artificial urgency cannot survive scrutiny. Which is why its primary function is to prevent scrutiny from happening. There is a particular emotional flavor to the experience of being manipulated through urgency that is worth naming, because recognizing it in your body is one of your best early warning systems. It feels like a kind of frantic narrowing. Like the world suddenly got smaller and faster. Like you have tunnel vision on this one thing and everything else is blurred out. Like there is a voice in your head saying, decide, 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 and another voice, quieter, further away, trying to ask a question you can't quite hear because the first voice is too loud. That quiet voice is your rational mind trying to do its job. The frantic narrowing is the manipulation working. And learning to recognize that specific internal state, and to treat it not as a signal to hurry but as a signal to pause, is one of the most practically valuable things you can develop. So what is the actual antidote? The most powerful single response to urgency manipulation is the deliberate introduction of a pause. Not a long pause necessarily, sometimes even 30 seconds of conscious, deliberate stillness is enough to let the prefrontal cortex come back online and re-engage your rational evaluation. Ask yourself 3 questions in that pause. First, who benefits from me deciding right now rather than later? If the answer is primarily the person applying the pressure, that is a significant red flag. Second, what would actually happen if I waited? Often, genuinely good opportunities survive a brief delay. The things that evaporate the moment you ask for time were frequently not real opportunities to begin with. Third, am I feeling the appeal of this thing, or am I feeling the pain of losing it? Because those are 2 completely different emotional states, and only one of them is a reliable guide to what you actually want. For scarcity specifically, train yourself to verify before you respond emotionally. Is this actually scarce, or has it been framed as scarce? Can you check? The hotel that claims one room is left, is that true at midnight when the site recalibrates? The investment closing tomorrow, has it closed before and reopened? The partner who is suddenly unavailable, is there a pattern here, a cycle, a reliable reappearance of distance right after closeness? Genuine scarcity is usually verifiable and usually makes logical sense in context. Manufactured scarcity rarely survives a single direct question asked calmly and without apology. The deepest truth about urgency and scarcity manipulation is that it works by temporarily making you a stranger to yourself, someone who makes decisions based on fear of loss rather than genuine desire. The protection against it is not cynicism, and it is not slowness for its own sake. It is simply the habit of returning to yourself before you act. Taking a breath. Asking whose urgency this actually is. And remembering that anything worth having can almost always wait 5 minutes for you to think clearly. Part 4. Social Proof Hijacking. Picture this. You are walking down an unfamiliar street in a city you don't know well, and you are hungry. There are 2 restaurants next to each other. One is packed, every table full, people waiting by the door, a low roar of conversation spilling out onto the sidewalk. The other is nearly empty, a few scattered tables occupied, a bored-looking server scrolling through their phone. The menus are similar. The prices are similar. You have never eaten at either one. And yet the decision feels almost automatic. You get in line for the full one. Not because you have any actual evidence that the food is better. Not because anyone told you. But because somewhere deep in your cognition, a very old and usually very reliable heuristic fires, if that many people chose this, they probably know something I don't. That heuristic is called social proof. The term was coined by psychologist Robert Cialdini in his landmark 1984 book Influence, and it describes one of the most fundamental mechanisms of human decision-making. We are social creatures who evolved in groups, and in those groups, tracking what other members of the group were doing, what they were eating, where they were going, who they were trusting, was a genuine survival strategy. In a complex, information-rich world where we cannot possibly evaluate everything from first principles, using other people's choices as a guide is not stupidity. It is efficiency. Most of the time, it works. The full restaurant usually does have better food. The highly reviewed product usually is better than the unreviewed one. The widely trusted person usually is more trustworthy than the unknown one. But most of the time is not always. And the gap between those two things is where social proof hijacking lives. Social proof hijacking is the deliberate manipulation of the appearance of consensus, popularity, or collective endorsement in order to influence your behavior, not by giving you genuine evidence of what other people actually think, but by manufacturing the impression of that evidence. It is the difference between a restaurant that is full because the food is extraordinary and a restaurant that hired people to stand in line outside to make it look full. From where you are standing on the sidewalk, these two situations are visually identical. Your social proof heuristic fires the same way in both cases. And that indistinguishability is the entire foundation of the manipulation. Let's start with the commercial landscape, because it is the most saturated with this tactic and the most instructive about how sophisticated it has become. Fake reviews are perhaps the most widespread form of social proof hijacking in the modern world. A 2022 study estimated that somewhere between 30 and 40% of all online reviews across major platforms are either fake or incentivized, meaning they do not represent the genuine, unsolicited experience of real customers. They are manufactured social proof, designed to trigger your other people chose this heuristic and route your purchasing decision in a particular direction. and they work with remarkable consistency, because the human brain does not naturally apply the same skepticism to what appears to be pure opinion that it applies to obvious advertising. When a company says our product is great, you filter for bias. When 400 strangers say this product is great, you tend to believe them, even if those 400 strangers were paid, incentivized, or algorithmically generated. The influencer economy is essentially a professionalized, scaled version of the same mechanism. When someone with 3 million followers posts enthusiastically about a supplement, a skincare product, or an investment platform, the psychological effect on the viewer is not "this person was paid to say this." The psychological effect is "someone I feel like I know and trust has chosen this thing." The parasocial relationship, the one-sided sense of intimacy and familiarity that audiences develop with content creators, amplifies the social proof signal dramatically. You are not just seeing that someone chose this product. You are seeing that this specific person whose judgment you have come to trust chose it. The fact that the choice was financially motivated, contractually obligated, and in some cases not even genuine, that the influencer may never have used the product, is invisible to the part of your brain that is processing the social proof signal. But social proof hijacking extends far beyond consumer manipulation, and this is where it becomes genuinely dangerous in ways that touch the most important decisions people make. In political contexts, the manufacturing of apparent consensus is a weapon of extraordinary power. AstroTurfing, the creation of fake grassroots movements, has been a documented political tactic for decades. Bot networks on social media platforms can make a fringe position appear to have massive popular support simply by generating volume. When an ordinary person scrolling through their feed sees thousands of posts expressing a particular view, their social brain registers, "This is what people think. This is the consensus." And consensus, in human social psychology, creates pressure to conform, not because we are weak, but because we are wired to understand that being radically out of step with our social group carries real costs. Manufactured political consensus exploits that wiring to make people doubt the validity of their own genuinely held views, or to feel more comfortable expressing views they might otherwise keep private because they suddenly believe those views are widely shared. In interpersonal manipulation, social proof hijacking takes a form that is perhaps the most personally damaging of all, and the most rarely discussed. It sounds like this: "Everyone I've talked to thinks you're being unreasonable. All our friends agree that you overreacted. Even your sister said she thinks you're too sensitive about this. People at work have noticed how difficult you've been lately." These statements do several things simultaneously. They invoke the authority of a group consensus. They make you feel isolated, like you are the one outlier in a sea of people who see your behavior clearly and find it wanting. They make it socially costly to maintain your own position. And critically, they are often entirely fabricated or wildly distorted. Everyone might be one person. All our friends might mean a selective conversation with one mutual acquaintance who was told a one-sided version of events. People at work have noticed might mean the manipulator mentioned something to one colleague in passing. The manufactured social proof does not need to be elaborate to be effective. It just needs to make you feel like the weight of collective judgment is against you. This interpersonal form of social proof manipulation connects directly with something researchers call pluralistic ignorance, a phenomenon where most members of a group privately hold a certain view but publicly behave as if they hold the opposite view, because each individual believes they are the only one who privately feels differently. Classic studies in social psychology demonstrated this with uncomfortable clarity. In one famous experiment, participants were placed in a room that began filling with smoke. When they were alone, most people quickly got up and reported the smoke. When they were placed in a room with actors who were instructed to ignore the smoke and continue their work calmly, most people also stayed seated, even as the smoke thickened, because the apparent calm of others read as social proof that nothing was wrong. This is not an edge case. This is a core feature of human group psychology. And manipulators, whether they understand the research or simply understand people, exploit it constantly. If they can make you feel like everyone else is comfortable with a situation that is making you deeply uncomfortable, many people will override their own legitimate distress rather than be the one person who sees something others apparently cannot. The authority plus social proof combination deserves special attention because it is particularly potent and particularly common. When a manipulator can invoke both the apparent endorsement of a respected authority and the apparent consensus of a group, the resulting pressure on individual judgment is immense. This is why cult leaders surround themselves with testimonials. Why pyramid scheme recruiters bring new prospects to group meetings where the room is full of apparently successful, happy participants. Why certain coaches and therapists who operate exploitatively make sure their potential clients see a wall of effusive endorsements before the first session. The authority provides the vertical credibility. The social proof provides the horizontal confirmation. Together they create a sense that resistance is not just wrong but lonely, that to push back is to separate yourself from a community of people who have found something genuinely valuable. So how do you actually protect yourself from social proof hijacking without becoming so suspicious of consensus that you can't function socially? The first move is to ask a deceptively simple question: can I verify this? Fake reviews tend to cluster in detectable patterns, overly similar language, accounts with limited history, a suspicious concentration of 5-star reviews with no middle ground opinions. Claimed group consensus in interpersonal contexts can often be tested directly. Have those conversations yourself, with people, and see what they actually say rather than what you've been told they said. Political astroturfing can be partially exposed by looking at account creation dates, posting patterns, and the specific language used across supposedly independent sources. The second move is to separate the question of popularity from the question of quality or correctness. These things correlate sometimes. They are not the same thing. The fact that many people believe something does not make it true. The fact that something is widely consumed does not make it good. The fact that a group apparently agrees does not mean you are wrong to disagree. Remind yourself of this explicitly when you feel the social pressure of apparent consensus, because the social proof heuristic operates below conscious awareness and sometimes needs to be consciously countered. The third and perhaps most important move is to notice when social proof is being used to isolate you from your own judgment rather than to inform it. Genuine social proof gives you information and lets you do something with it. Hijacked social proof makes you feel that your own perception is illegitimate, that the crowd sees something you don't, that your dissent is evidence of your deficiency rather than your independence. When consensus is being used as a weapon against your self-trust rather than as useful information about the world, that weaponization is the tell. Because real social agreement does not need to make you feel crazy for having a different view. Only manufactured social agreement needs that. Only manufactured social agreement depends on you not checking. We are social animals. We are supposed to care what others think. We are supposed to update our views in light of what people around us believe and do. That is not a flaw, it is the foundation of culture, cooperation, and collective intelligence. What dark psychology does is take that beautiful feature of human nature and turn it into a door. A door into your judgment, your decisions, your sense of what is real. The lock on that door is not suspicion. It is the habit of asking, every time you feel the pull of the crowd, is this crowd real? Did they arrive here freely? And does their presence here actually tell me anything true about where I should go? Part 5. Covert Contracts. There is a particular kind of resentment that is unlike any other. It is not the clean, hot anger that comes from someone openly wronging you. It is not the sharp sting of betrayal where the facts are clear and the violation is obvious. It is something slower and more confusing, a thick, accumulating sense that you owe something you never agreed to, that you have somehow failed someone who never told you what they needed, that a debt has been called in on a loan you don't remember taking. You feel guilty but you're not sure why. You feel accused but nothing has been said directly. You feel like you have disappointed someone profoundly, and the most disorienting part is that you are not entirely sure what you were supposed to do differently. If you have ever felt this way inside a relationship, romantic, familial, professional, or otherwise, there is a very good chance that you have been living inside someone else's covert contract. A covert contract is an unspoken, unilateral agreement that one person makes, entirely in their own mind, about what they will do for another person and what they expect to receive in return. The defining feature, the thing that makes it covert rather than simply an unexpressed hope, is that it is never communicated. The other person, you, in this scenario, has no idea the contract exists. No idea that the favors are being tallied. No idea that the kindnesses come with an expectation attached. No idea that a system of obligation is being constructed around you, brick by invisible brick, until the day the contract is called in and you are handed an invoice for a debt you never knowingly incurred. The concept was brought into popular conversation largely through the work of author Robert Glover, who wrote about covert contracts extensively in the context of what he called nice guy syndrome, a pattern where people, often but not exclusively men, perform acts of niceness, generosity, and accommodation not from genuine altruism but from an unspoken transactional expectation. The logic of the covert contract runs something like this: if I am helpful enough, patient enough, generous enough, available enough, if I give enough without being asked, then the other person will naturally, inevitably give me what I need in return. Love, respect, sex, recognition, loyalty, validation. The specific currency varies. The structure is always the same. And the catastrophic flaw in the logic is always the same too. The other person never agreed to this transaction. They don't know it's happening. They are simply experiencing someone being nice to them, and responding as a normal human being responds, with appreciation, perhaps, but not with the specific reciprocation the contract demands, because they have no idea reciprocation is being demanded. What makes covert contracts a dark psychology tactic rather than simply a communication failure is what happens when they go unfulfilled. Because they always go unfulfilled. A contract the other person doesn't know about cannot be honored. And when it isn't, when the person who constructed the contract in silence does not receive what they silently decided they were owed, the response is not "I should have communicated my needs more clearly." The response is resentment, anger, sometimes a sudden, confusing explosion of grievance that seems wildly out of proportion to the immediate trigger, because it is not actually about the immediate trigger. It is about the accumulated weight of 100 invisible transactions that the other person was never a party to. And critically, and this is where the manipulation becomes most visible, the person operating the covert contract often uses the unfulfilled contract as justification for punishing behavior. Withdrawal of affection, passive aggression, sabotage, the silent treatment, emotional coldness deployed without explanation. You don't know what you did wrong because you didn't do anything wrong. You failed to fulfill an obligation you were never told you had. Let's make this concrete, because covert contracts are one of those concepts that can feel abstract until you see your own life reflected in the examples. Consider Marcus and his colleague Diana. Marcus notices that Diana is stressed about an upcoming presentation and stays late 2 evenings to help her prepare. He brings her coffee without being asked. He covers for her in a meeting when she's running behind. He does all of this voluntarily, without Diana asking, and without telling Diana what he expects in return, because in Marcus's internal framework, a good colleague will naturally, obviously recognize this investment and reciprocate. When the department is reorganized 3 months later and Diana supports a different candidate for the team lead position rather than Marcus, he is devastated. Not just disappointed, devastated and furious. He tells mutual colleagues that Diana is disloyal, that she used him, that she is not the person he thought she was. Diana, for her part, is genuinely bewildered. She appreciated Marcus's help. She thought of him as a kind colleague. She had no idea he was keeping score. She had no idea there was a score. From Marcus's perspective, she betrayed a deal. From Diana's perspective, there was no deal. Or consider a family dynamic that will feel familiar to a significant number of people watching this. A parent who sacrifices enormously for their children, financially, emotionally, in terms of career and personal dreams, and who never explicitly discusses these sacrifices or the expectations attached to them. The children grow up, build their own lives, make choices the parent disagrees with, prioritize their own families and careers in ways that leave less room for the parent than the parent expected. And the parent experiences this as abandonment, as ingratitude, as a fundamental betrayal of what was owed. After everything I did for you. That phrase, after everything I did for you, is the sound of a covert contract being called in. And the tragedy is that it is genuinely felt. The parent genuinely did sacrifice. The pain is real. But the contract was never mutual. The children could not fulfill an obligation they did not know existed, and the failure to fulfill it was used, consciously or not, as a lever of guilt and obligation for years or decades. In romantic relationships, covert contracts operate with particular cruelty because the domain they govern is so emotionally charged. The partner who does all the housework without discussion and then resents their partner for not noticing and reciprocating. The person who always initiates plans and then withdraws coldly when the initiative isn't matched, without ever having expressed that they need their partner to initiate equally. The individual who supports their partner through a difficult period with the unspoken expectation that this investment will be repaid in kind during their own difficult period, and who feels devastated and betrayed when their partner, not knowing a reciprocal debt was being tracked, responds imperfectly during their turn. None of these people are necessarily malicious. Many of them are simply people who never learn to ask directly for what they need, people for whom direct requests feel too vulnerable, too exposed, too likely to be refused. The covert contract is a way of trying to get needs met while maintaining plausible deniability about having needs at all. And it fails every time, because needs that are never expressed can never be genuinely met. But there is a version of covert contract use that is fully conscious, fully deliberate, and genuinely predatory. And it is worth spending time here because it is more common than most people realize. Deliberate covert contract manipulation involves performing favors and acts of generosity specifically to create a sense of obligation in another person, not because the manipulator actually expects the contract to be fulfilled, but because the unfulfilled obligation itself is the goal. The unpaid debt is the leverage. Think of the person who insists on paying for dinner, then paying for the next dinner, then paying for a gift you didn't ask for, and who brushes off every attempt you make to reciprocate, not out of genuine generosity but because your reciprocity would cancel the debt. As long as you owe them, they have a claim on you. The debt is the point. Researchers who study social influence have documented this pattern in detail. The strategic gift giver, the person whose generosity is so relentless and so impossible to repay that it creates a persistent, uncomfortable sense of obligation that can be activated whenever they need something from you. This is not kindness. It is the construction of a cage, built out of favors. the interaction between covert contracts and self-sacrifice narratives is also worth examining, because it produces some of the most psychologically complex and damaging relationship dynamics that exist. When someone has constructed an identity around being the selfless one, the one who gives without asking, who sacrifices without complaint, who puts everyone else first, covert contracts become not just a communication problem but a core feature of how they experience their own worth. Their generosity is genuine, in the sense that it is real and it costs them something. But it is also strategic, in the sense that it is designed to produce a particular response, specifically, to make them feel needed, valued, and irreplaceable. When the response doesn't come, when the people around them live their lives without constantly acknowledging the sacrifice, the self-narrative of the martyr and the logic of the covert contract combine into something genuinely toxic, a bottomless grievance dressed up as virtue. I do everything for everyone and no one appreciates it. The suffering is real. The structure producing it is one they built themselves and never told anyone about. So how do you identify covert contracts in your own relationships, both the ones being run on you and, crucially, the ones you might be running yourself? The signal to look for in others is the disproportionate response. When someone reacts to a situation with anger, hurt, or withdrawal that seems wildly larger than the apparent cause, ask yourself, is it possible they had an expectation I didn't know about? Is it possible that in their mind, a transaction occurred that I was never a party to? This won't always be the answer, but when it is, naming it gently, it seems like you were expecting something from this situation that we never actually discussed, can cut through months of accumulated resentment in a single conversation. Or it can confirm that the person is not interested in genuine communication, only in maintaining the leverage that the unpaid debt provides. Looking for covert contracts in yourself requires more honesty and more discomfort, but it is arguably the more important work. Ask yourself, when I do something for someone, is there a part of me that is tracking it? Is there an unspoken and therefore attached to the generosity? And if the and therefore is never fulfilled, if the person doesn't respond the way my internal contract specified, what happens inside me? If the answer involves resentment, a sense of being owed, a withdrawal of warmth or investment, then you are running a covert contract. And the solution is not to stop being generous. The solution is to either give freely, genuinely freely, without the attached expectation, or to give while stating what you need in return. Both of those are healthy. Both of those give the other person a chance to actually be in a relationship with you rather than unwittingly failing the terms of an agreement they never signed. The deepest truth about covert contracts is that they are, at their core, a fear of vulnerability dressed up as a giving nature. Asking directly for what you need, saying I would like you to do this for me, saying I need you to acknowledge this, saying I want us to share this equally, requires exposing yourself to the possibility of refusal. Covert contracts are an attempt to get needs met without taking that risk, by building an obligation structure that makes refusal feel like a moral failure rather than a simple difference in preference. But the cost of that strategy is enormous. It poisons genuine connection at the root. It fills relationships with a low-grade toxicity of unspoken expectations and accumulated grievances. It makes generosity into a weapon and kindness into a transaction. And it denies both people in the relationship the experience of being genuinely chosen, because when someone gives you something to fulfill an invisible obligation, they are not choosing you. They are managing you. And when you receive what was actually earned through manipulation rather than freely given, it does not feel like love. It just feels like a debt you can never quite pay off, in a relationship where the terms keep changing and no one will show you the contract. Conclusion. We have covered a lot of ground together. And if you have made it to this point in the video, I want you to sit with something for a moment before we close. Because there is a very specific feeling that tends to accompany this kind of information, a retroactive clarity that can be disorienting in its own right. You are probably thinking about specific people, specific conversations, specific moments that are rearranging themselves in your memory right now, taking on new shapes in the light of what you have just learned. That dinner where you left feeling inexplicably smaller. That relationship that moved so fast it made your head spin. That colleague whose concern always seemed to arrive right before a request. That family member whose generosity always came with a weight you could never quite name. The pieces are fitting together. In that process, that recognition is not comfortable. But it is necessary. And it is the entire point. Here's what I want you to understand above everything else we discussed today. These 5 tactics, gaslighting, love bombing, scarcity and urgency manipulation, social proof hijacking, and covert contracts, are not exotic. They are not rare. They are not confined to extreme situations involving obvious villains. They are woven into the fabric of ordinary human interaction with a frequency that would be alarming if most people were aware of it. They happen in good families and loving relationships and respected workplaces. They are used by people who consider themselves kind, by people who are themselves victims of manipulation in other contexts, by people who have no conscious awareness that what they are doing has a name and a mechanism and a documented psychological effect. The darkness in dark psychology is not always intentional. Sometimes it is simply what happens when unexamined wounds meet unexamined power. And that complexity is important to hold on to, because the goal of understanding these tactics is not to turn every person in your life into a suspect. It is to give you the clarity to see what is actually happening, rather than what you are being told is happening. Because that is the thread that runs through every single tactic we covered today. Every one of them, in its own specific way, is an attack on your ability to perceive reality accurately and respond to it freely. Gaslighting attacks your perception directly, dismantling your trust in your own memory and judgment. Love bombing floods your emotional system so completely that your critical evaluation never gets a chance to engage. Scarcity and urgency manipulation neurologically degrades your capacity for rational decision-making at precisely the moment a decision is being forced. Social proof hijacking corrupts the information environment you use to calibrate your own views and choices. Covert contracts surround you with invisible obligations that make you feel perpetually guilty and perpetually indebted without ever being told why. Different tactics. One underlying purpose. To get between you and your own clear thinking. To insert someone else's agenda into the space where your autonomous judgment should be. And the defense against all of them, the common thread running through every protective strategy we discussed, is the same thing. It is the deliberate, practiced act of returning to yourself. Pausing before you act. Trusting the quiet voice before the loud one. Checking your own perception against external reality rather than against the reality of the person who benefits from you being confused. Asking whose urgency this actually is. Asking whether the consensus is real. Asking what the unspoken expectation might be. Asking whether your memory of what happened is being questioned by someone who benefits from you doubting it. These are not complicated questions. But they require something that manipulation is specifically designed to prevent: a moment of stillness. A moment of contact with your own mind, your own values, your own sense of what is true. I want to say something directly to anyone watching this who recognize their own current situation in any of these descriptions. If you are in a relationship, romantic, familial, professional, where gaslighting is a regular feature, where you feel perpetually guilty for needs you cannot quite name, where the warmth is unpredictable and the urgency is constant, where your perception of reality is treated as a symptom rather than a valid account, please hear this clearly. What you are experiencing is not a you problem. It is not evidence that you are too sensitive, too demanding, too broken, or too difficult. It is evidence that someone has learned, at some point in their life, that these tactics work. And they are working them on you. Recognizing that is not an ending. It is a beginning. It is the moment the fog starts to clear. And what you do with that clarity is yours to decide, but you cannot decide anything freely until you can see clearly. And now you can see a little more clearly than you could an hour ago. For those of you watching this from a place of relative safety, people who encountered these patterns in the past, or who simply want to understand the psychological landscape they are navigating, the most valuable thing you can do with this information is not to use it as a diagnostic tool for labeling the people around you. It is to use it as a calibration tool for yourself. The more fluently you understand how these mechanisms work, the more quickly you will feel the subtle wrongness when one of them begins to operate in your vicinity. That feeling, the slight disorientation, the unearned guilt, the frantic narrowing, the sense that your reality is being quietly edited, that feeling becomes data rather than confusion. And data you can work with. There's one more thing I want to leave you with, and it is something that often gets lost in conversations about manipulation and dark psychology because the focus tends to stay on the tactics themselves. The reason these tactics exist, the reason they have been refined and transmitted across generations and contexts and cultures, is that human connection is the most valuable thing there is. We are creatures who need each other with a depth and a desperation that is genuinely extraordinary. We need to be seen. We need to belong. We need to feel chosen and valued and real in someone else's eyes. That need is not a weakness. It is not a vulnerability to be ashamed of or defended against. It is the most human thing about us. Dark psychology tactics work because they target something real and precious, the hunger for genuine connection, and they offer a counterfeit version of it that is just convincing enough to accept, at least for a while. The answer to that is not to stop needing connection. The answer is to become better at recognizing the real thing. Real connection does not require you to lose your grip on reality. It does not arrive at a speed that prevents you from thinking clearly. It does not depend on you feeling urgently afraid of losing it. It does not need a crowd of apparent endorsers to validate it. And it does not come with an invoice attached. Real connection can survive a pause. It can survive a question. It can survive you saying, "I need a moment to think." It can survive your doubt and your boundaries and your inconvenient perceptions. It can survive, in fact, exactly the kind of clear-eyed awareness that every tactic we discussed today is designed to prevent. That is what you are building now. Not armor. Not distance. Not a suspicious, defended version of yourself that keeps everyone at arm's length. Just awareness. Just the ability to see. And in a world where so much depends on you not seeing clearly, where so many systems, so many people, so many tactics are quietly invested in keeping you confused and reactive and small, the simple act of seeing clearly is not a small thing. It is, in the most literal sense, your freedom. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video gave you something useful, a name for something you experienced, a tool you didn't have before, a moment of recognition that felt important, share it with someone who might need it. Because the best thing knowledge like this can do is travel. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you in the next one.